Good morning from New York. This is the first panel for the Limitless conference here from New York City. My name is Michael Friedl. I'm going to be the moderator of this panel. I'm the Austrian Trade Commissioner for the US based in New York City. So I head Advantage Austria, which is Austria's official trade and innovation promotion agency. And we're sitting here on the 9th floor of the iconic Art Deco Chrysler building. I guess most of you might know the building. It was erected nearly 100 years ago, and at that time it was extremely influential on other architects who tried to copy it, but also on other business people who wanted to erect even higher buildings than Chrysler. And we will be talking about influence today. Maybe not architectural influence, but influence in a business environment, influence towards customers, towards your team, towards your boss, towards people you have to convince. And I'm very happy and very honored to have a great panel this morning. We have Amanda Goetz from House of Wise and Sandra Campos from Project Verte. And if I may ask you to introduce yourself, let's start with Amanda.
Hey, everyone. Amanda Goetz. I'm the CEO and founder of House of Wise, which is a luxury CBD company helping women to take control of their sleep, sex, stress, and wealth. And we launched last year and have raised a couple of rounds of financing and are rocking and rolling.
Hi, I'm Sandra Campos, and I am the CEO of Project Verte, which is a retail and supply chain solutions technology company. I am a 30-year veteran of retail, running and operating as president and CEO of various brands that range from Diamond Furstenberg to Juicy Couture, BB, BCBG, and others that I've been very fortunate to be able to lead. And I pivoted my role into technology so that I could really be behind the scenes in understanding the future of what tech means across a whole range of businesses. And that's what I'm doing today, as well as I'm also the founder of Fashion Launchpad, which is a digital education platform. So it's an edtech platform that's specifically targeted for ongoing education for retail and fashion professionals.
Well, thanks, Amanda and Sandra. We started the topic of influence and we were discussing it a little bit before. And when I read the title, How to Influence People, and no offense to the organizers, but I felt a little bit suspicious about, the word influence. For me, it could also mean how to manipulate people. But if you say that this is a very influential businesswoman, you see it maybe in a different context. Or here in New York, when you drive under the influence and you get stopped by the New York Police Department, you don't want to do this. So talking about influence, what does influence mean to you? And do you see yourself as an influential person? Maybe Sandra.
Oh, I think influence has a lot of different connotations, as you just mentioned, but certainly one from a positive angle would be how you actually communicate with others. And I think communication is one part of it, but also just as important as communication and how you communicate is how much you listen. And how you listen and interpret the needs and the wants of the people that you're trying to be influential over or with, whether it's your peers, whether it's your family, whether it's your in business life. And it's so important to really be able to listen and to identify the type of people that you're actually working with and what they need. What do they need from you as a leader specifically? And when you're leading various groups of people across a lot of different types of experiences, you need to try to, at least I have found that you need to try to really understand how they perceive influence and how they perceive what you're saying, because everyone's perception is their own reality as well. And so for me, being influential or trying to be influential within an organization, part of it is a little bit of a sales, because you always have to sell everything. You're selling your ideas, you're selling yourself, you're selling your commitment, you're selling your integrity. And part of that is there, but it's also very much about your passion and your commitment and truly being authentically yourself, to have those that work with you or for you understand how much you actually care, that you care about them, you care about the business goals, you care about what you're trying to accomplish. But listening is a big part of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think social media has diluted the word influencer a little bit for everyone. Like, what does an influencer mean? But at the core of it, it's you have established an emotional connection with an audience or a person on the other side. And that emotional connection leads to trust. And so I always think women have a ton of influence. Like whether you're influencing your 3 best friends via text of something that you just learned about or something that's helping you, all the way to 30,000 people on social media, the root of all of that is truly an established trust and emotional connection and authenticity, really. Because there are definitely social media influencers out there that have large followings, but as a marketer, I've been in marketing for 15 years. I always look at how are people responding? What's the sentiment? What's the engagement look like? Because that really tells you how influential the person is. It's not about quantity, it's really about the quality of the connection. And I think people really dilute those two things or conflate those two things really, because you can have power over a lot of people. You can reach a lot of people, but how do you actually convert them as like a marketer if you're thinking about an audience, but really in a leadership sense, how do you get them to do the thing you want them to do, but actually believe it's the right thing for them? Which I think power and influence are very different things.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting what you said, that it's not only about the quantity, it's also about the quality. So if you have 90 million followers, you might be a great influencer, but are you really influencing people with authenticity, with the communication, as you said, and with trust? Do they trust you? So do you have some examples in your own life or business environment where you can say you really influenced somebody? Is there something where, for our audience, also our female viewers, who would say, "Oh, that's interesting. This is an example of influencing somebody"?
Well, for me, having led a lot of brands over many years now and coming into a lot of businesses to turn them around, you really have to have a lot of influence to be able to convince an organization that they need to change how they're doing things. So it really comes with, for me, it's about identifying the opportunity, identifying the strategy, and very clearly communicating the why of everything. Why are we here? What do we stand for? Why are we doing this? Who's the audience that we're actually trying to connect with? So very much focusing on delivering a clear communication about that message. But I think everyone really gathers around the why. Why are you here? It's more than just execution. It's the execution for the why. So that, to me, again, every single company that I go in, it's really about that, really looking at the opportunity, identifying the holes, and really being able to clearly articulate a strategy, and having everyone within the company, from every level on down, understand what that strategy is and why we're there to do it. And you have to remind the why very often. So it's coming back and saying, once again, here's where we are, here's the why, here's what we did really well, and celebrating those small wins, and then having everybody understand that what we laid out, now we've hit one stride, we've hit one win, and now we're going to keep going, and this is why. So just for that reminder and being able to really articulate that well repeatedly, I think is what has worked for me.
So I guess the why also means that people in your organization can identify with the goals of the organization because they know why you're doing this.
Sure. And if it's, in the businesses that are consumer oriented, you're focused on the consumer. Why are you doing this? You're helping women, in terms of sleep and their sex life and other things that you just mentioned about the House of Wise. And in my previous roles, it's about helping women to feel empowered by the way that they look and they feel in the clothing that we put together and the products that we provide to them. Now, from a technology standpoint, it's all about the client and helping them to be able to ultimately help the customer have a great journey and a great experience. So there's the why, and you communicate that in a way that everybody can understand. Okay, so every single action will have an outcome that's going to impact that why.
We had a safe word at my last company that it took the emotion out of context setting, because I think junior people on a team feel sometimes like they can't speak up and say, like, I don't understand why we're doing this. And that's really hard in a large organization. So we created this framework called KUBA, which is KUBA, which is to know, to understand, to believe, then act. And most of the time, we go straight to the A as leaders. We'll just be like, go do this thing. But what you realize is to have real influence over a large group of people. And it's exactly what you were just talking about, is communicating the thing, but then getting them to understand it and actually believe it's the right thing to do before they actually act. And so we always used to say, like, oh, I haven't been KUBA'd on this thing. And it just took, it was a safe word to say, I'm not there yet. I don't believe or really understand why we're doing this. And I highly encourage people to use that framework because it just takes the emotion out of it and just really just be like, help me understand why. And it goes back to just the why behind it all.
I think the KUBA kind of framework that you have is something that I might also use in my organization.
You learn something every day.
I learn every day. I'm here to learn. You said when you talk about influence, you also automatically talk a little bit about leadership and influencing people. So is there a way to learn how to become an influential leader? Is it a natural thing that comes when you have your own personal histories and stories that give you authenticity, that give you personal life experience, that makes it maybe easier to do KUBA and make people convinced of the why? But can you learn that? Is there a technique?
I will say when I started out my career at Ernst & Young, and there were very few women leaders in a big professional services organization, and I would try to like emulate things that they did. And then over the course of 15 years, I realized that I lead differently. I am a very like transparent, vulnerable, emotional, connected person. And I don't lead with just power and I don't lean into masculine energy as much. And I think the TLDR of all of that is being comfortable with who I am and learning that and leaning into those as strengths versus trying to mirror someone else because it doesn't come across authentic. And therapy, things that are very introspective, also help you as a leader understand other people's triggers or whys and how they act. And so the more and more you get curious about just human psychology and behavior helps you to really become a more empathetic but really influential leader in your organization, because when you understand how somebody's viewing something, you can then speak to them in the way that they need to be spoken to. And it's more dynamic to each individual, which is hard to do if you're just trying to like focus on this is how I'm going to lead. It's got to be like very cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I think people learn from different examples, and there's been different phases of generations that lead in different ways. So those leaders may have learned from other leaders that were similar. But I do believe in learning and reading and listening, because there are different generations now that are at work. So you've got Generation Z, you've got millennials, you've got still baby boomers working, and they're all very different, and they expect to be led in a different way. You know, we've got remote work now that didn't exist in prior generations. We have the need to be more empathetic about various situations now. There's a lot of focus on DE&I now. There's a lot of things that are different today than they were 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. So as the different generations come on, I believe that, you know, leaders have coaches, they have advisors, and they're very different things.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that gives advice and somebody that coaches you along in terms of how to build that strategy, how to execute it, how to be able to lead your team, etc. So there is a way to learn by reading, by having advisors, by also, you know, seeing and paying attention to what other leaders are doing across different industries. It doesn't have to be your own industry, and finding that passion and the commitment that others have to then be able to learn from them. But I do think it is something that, you know, leadership, in my mind, somebody feels comfortable leading. You feel comfortable at 3 years old, or you feel comfortable at 30 years old. You know, you're going to feel comfortable with it, but you can learn how to be a better and a stronger and a more empathetic leader and a more well-rounded leader by having your advisors, having your coaches, reading and listening and looking and constantly learning. You know, I'm a lifelong learner. I want to be a lifelong learner. You mentioned the same thing. And I think that's so important because life changes. And as life changes, business changes.
I mean, you mentioned empathy, you mentioned listening and learning. When we talk about maybe differences between men and women, women are considered to be more empathetic in general, are better listeners. You know, I mean, I know it from my own marriage. Does it mean that women are the better leaders and influencers? hope I don't put you on the spot, but it's a...
I don't think that has to be the case.
Mm.
I think that there's a lot of focus right now on having women on boards. And with all of that comes a lot of data point around the fact that when women are on boards, companies perform better.
Mhm.
There are a lot of companies that are performing better with women CEOs. And so those are data points that are out there to illustrate a point, but I don't think it has to be that. I think for me, certainly becoming a mother did make me more empathetic in looking at my team. And I think that that's one thing, but that doesn't exclude men from also feeling empathy towards what somebody else is going through and learning how to be a better leader as well. I don't think it's exclusive. I just think there's a lot of data points around that right now, just based on the focus on getting more women at the top, more women leaders and more women on boards today, certainly from a US standpoint.
Yeah, I echo everything that Sandra just said. I think the conversation needs to be less around is one better than the other and more about what can we learn from one another, because empathy can be understood and taught to an extent. You can learn how to be a better listener. You can learn how to do active listening and validate someone's emotions and not jump to conclusions. Like all of that stuff that's just tools that may come more instinctually or naturally to a woman, because like I have 3 kids like and toddlers. So sometimes like I'm always trying to like talk to a toddler and really influence them, which doesn't always work. But you learn a lot about framing things to people when you're constantly negotiating with kids. But that's not to say that it's gender specific. I think that diversity of thought, diversity of emotion, like that's all important in an organization, and leaning into those characteristics and learning from one another is so vital.
Mm-hmm.
I also think like leadership changes, your own individual leadership changes over time. You're not immediately the leader that you're going to be 20 years later. You learn through the people on your team. You learn through the mistakes that you make.
Mm-hmm.
You learn by other people's mistakes and other people's, great virtues as well. So I think it's definitely a combination. It doesn't have to be exclusive, to one or the other.
I see there's a lot of questions already coming in from our viewers and the audience. I hope we can read it. The question is from Monica for Amanda. What is it like to be the founder and CEO of a female-based brand?
So for me, I started the company out of a personal mission. I was getting a divorce. I had 3 kids under the age of 4, and I was leading a global brand with a very large team, and I was immensely stressed, to say the least. And I turned to cannabis out of desperation, despite a lot of stigma and a lot of personal stigma against cannabis. And it helped me immensely. It helped me to cut back on alcohol and feel in control of my life. And I felt like there were all these stigmas. And so I started tweeting about my life a little bit more. I would talk about marketing, but I'd also talk about infertility or miscarriage or getting a divorce or being a parent in a pandemic. And what I found was there was this community of women that parts of my story resonated. And when I talked about using cannabis, their eyes were like, wait, you use cannabis? Like, I didn't expect that. Like, tell me more. And their ears opened up to it. And I realized that there weren't brands speaking to this demographic, like a woman who is high functioning, trying to have it all, but realizes she needs help. And so to me, being a leader for a female focused company and brand is truly a personal mission, because I want to remove stigmas and double standards around all of these things. And so every day I wake up, and for me, if I can make one woman's life better, if she can sleep better, feel more in control of her stress, have a better sex life, like all of those things keep me going, because it's just helping women day in and day out, which is what gets me up every day.
Who doesn't want that?
Right?
Fantastic. Another question from Anda for Sandra. Which triggers indicate the right time to listen to your own gut feelings when it comes to important business moves?
Well, that's a really good question, because I've said for a long time that data actually informs you, but your gut instinct is what drives you. And, your gut gets developed, your instincts get developed over time, because I've certainly been there both as an entrepreneur, as a corporate executive, making mistakes and seeing what happens with those mistakes so then I don't make them again. But it's the data you need. I'm a big believer in data and I love data analytics, but that's going to inform you of information, but your instincts, your drive, you need to listen to, because no matter what, if anybody asked me today, what do you regret? It always is something I knew I needed to do, but I didn't do it, or I didn't do it fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
I always say that your gut or your instinct is actually your subconscious data processing, because I'm very data focused as well. And I believe that we're constantly consuming data inputs, but we just can't consciously interpret them. And I think gut, because I think women who say that they're leading with the gut or their maternal instinct or just instinct in general, it has this negative stigma to it. And I actually want to like push against that, because I do think that instinct comes from experience and processing all of that stuff subconsciously, and then it comes forward in instinct.
Does CBD improve your gut feelings, actually? Because it makes you a bit more relaxed and you listen maybe in a different way?
Have something for
that. I mean, it definitely helps with your ECS to regulate and promote a sense of calm and stability and kind of equilibrium. So for sure, it gives you more clear.
So if you also have products for men, I'm interested.
Men do use our product.
Also a question from Pia to Amanda. How do you gain stakeholder support, being political sometimes and still stay true to yourself and keep your authenticity, I guess? Yeah.
One technique I use for gaining stakeholder support is rallying the troops, but spending time. Listen, human psychology, like people want to feel important and a part of the conversation and brought in early, not being told what to do after the conversations have already happened. And so if you really want to push something forward, maybe you have an idea for a project or a campaign, rallying the troops means you spend the time. It takes time to gain this stakeholder support, but going around and having one-on-one conversations with people, sharing their idea, but putting it in a way that's like, I want your feedback, so that by the time you're ready to present it to the decision maker, you have all these people who felt like they have a fingerprint on that thing, and now they're championing it because they're like, oh, I'm a part of this now. And so that rallying, which takes time, and it's important that you listen to them and not just say, this is my idea, I'll pretend to get your feedback, but like actually incorporate parts of their feedback. Then when you get it to the time to present it to the decision maker, you have a lot of support.
I will just say that I've done both throughout my career, and it's definitely better to do exactly as Amanda said, which is to be able to rally those troops and have people involved in the thoughts and in the decision, and then ultimately the outcome is much more positive.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Monica for Sandra. What do you think is the most difficult aspect of being an entrepreneur?
The roller coaster ride. It's a roller coaster ride every day, right? I mean, I've been on both sides, and while business in general has a lot of ups and downs, being an entrepreneur, because you are everything.
Yeah.
It has a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and every single day you can have many of them. So I think just, maybe the CBD product is great to be able to help with that, but maintaining a balance, maintaining, a core and staying very, very focused on what your end result is. Like, I am one that always looks at, where's my goal? What is my goal? What do I want it to be 5 years from now? And then I'm going to work backwards. So as I work backwards, I develop the strategies around, okay, how are we going to get there? If I want to be acquired, what's that type of company? Who's it going to be? What does that look like? And then I develop strategies kind of around that to get there.
Maybe same question for you.
So this is my second startup. And I will say with my first, as a founder, you sometimes can wrap your identity with the startup. And then the highs feel super high and the lows feel super low. And you ride both. Now with my second one, I mean, having gone through everything I've gone through, I'm very comfortable with my identity outside of House of Wise. And I also know the extreme highs and the extreme lows. So you don't ride either too much. You kind of allow yourself to be like, that was awesome. Oh, that sucked. But like you stay more in the middle, which doesn't drain your energy as much. But you have to keep that in mind, that like there's going to be really, really bad days and really, really awesome days. And you have to kind of try to stay in the middle.
And maybe a follow-up question. Are there certain mistakes you made at the beginning that you know better about now, that you wouldn't do now? And if a female entrepreneur comes and says, I want to start my business, I guess it depends on the sector, it depends on the idea, it depends on the why. But is there something you would advise them and say, this is a mistake you should not do at the beginning?
How much time do we have? The one that pops into my head the fastest is women are perfectionists, and especially because there's fewer female founders out there, we feel this greater sense of getting it like pixel perfect before launch. And what happens is this kind of like paralysis of launch, where you don't put something out there because you're so nervous, and then you've spent so much time on it that makes it feel even heavier. So I would just encourage people to just ship it, because whatever you ship on day one is going to be change 1,000 times before it starts to really grow. And the faster you can get something out there and start learning and getting feedback and talking to customers, that's when the fun magic happens. And that's when you actually start to build something huge. So stop trying to make everything perfect. Like the design is never going to be exactly what you want it to be. Stop comparing yourself to brands that have been doing it for 10 years. Like, get the thing out there and just start molding it.
I would say that don't make the mistake of going into business without a business plan. You need to have a business plan, because it guides you, it helps you stay focused, and it helps you along the way. When you don't have a business plan, you can go left, you can go right, you can do a lot more pivots than you may need to. Obviously, there are times when you do need to pivot, but have a business plan, have a very well curated and well thought out business plan.
Mm-hmm. Another question, it says for Amanda, but I guess it's for Sandra and Amanda. Did you have any mentors and what did you learn from them?
Do you want to start? Well, people talk about mentors and ask the same question. And I always say, like, it doesn't really matter who you learn from. I'm learning from Amanda, right? And we haven't even worked together. But I'm learning from a 25-year-old right now who's built an incredible media empire, and she's 25 and she's only been doing this for the last 5-6 years of her life. So mentors can come in different forms. It's how you take what you're learning from them. And, there's going to be, again, good days and bad days. Some days you're going to learn great things from people, and other days you're not. And I would say I've had people that I thought were mentors in my life who kind of helped influence my direction in my career. But then the ones that I truly feel they're mentors now are the ones that are those coaches on one side, the advisors on the other side. Mm-hmm. And they have not just been women. It's been women and men. Yep. And so we need the male allies as well. And I like to learn from both. So I kind of, I look at mentorship, and I just think it shouldn't be limited to your mentor is somebody that you work for, or the mentor's, somebody multiple levels above you, or it's really, you can be mentored by your peers. You can be mentored by people beneath you as well, as far as like, executive levels. That's not, to me, the most important thing. The most important thing is learning from everyone, kind of building your own community that helps you from a coaching standpoint and from an advising standpoint.
So in a way that don't forget to continuously learn by just waiting for the next mentor, in a way.
Right. Well, yeah. And that's, hence I'm the founder of a continuing education platform, because right. I really believe in continuing education and constantly learning and improving upon what you can do.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure with the word mentor. It's like, I've got to select this person and they will be like my shepherd through my right. career. And similarly, like, to me, a true mentor is someone that I don't have to be polished for, that I can come with just like the messy thoughts, and they can kind of help guide me through those. And similarly, I had a very big wake up call with this company, where I realized that I didn't have a lot of female founders in my life who were also moms, and especially single moms. Like, finding someone that you can also talk about all aspects of life, because they understand and can be empathetic and kind of have that mirror for you, I've found to be really important. And those people are the ones that, if a day is really rough, they're the ones I text and really am like, help me think through this, be my sounding board. And to me, that's mentorship. They're there kind of every day, just via text. You don't have to like come to them with like a full, like neat table of things to talk about.
And I guess it's not just about having a mentor, but being a mentor is also a lot of responsibility.
Well, I think to Amanda's point, if it's a formal, I'm your mentor. I had recently a young woman that works at our company. She came to me and she said, will you be my mentor? And I thought about that for a minute. I'm like, I'm not going to be the only mentor you have. And I can't, if you have a question, come and ask me. And I think that's the one thing I would also say to everyone. If you have a question, reach out and ask, because many people want to support. Many people want to share information and share knowledge. They don't want to be the hoarders. They want more women to grow, more women to get, to rise the ranks to the CEO role and whatever else it might be. And the reality is, like, just ask the question. The worst is going to be that they say no. I have always tried to answer it. It's hard now sometimes, but I've always tried to answer every single LinkedIn message, because people will reach out and I'm like, just ask what you want to ask for and be specific. If you just reach out and say like, hey, I just want to get connected, that's one thing. But if you say, I have this business and I really have a question, would you mind answering? And there are a lot of women that will go out there and will take the meetings, will take the phone calls, and will take 15, 30 minutes of their time to be able to talk you through a specific situation or a specific question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good point. The specificity, like I get a lot of DMs that are like, do you have 30 minutes to pick your brain?
Right.
And if you come to me and say, I have a question about this marketing strategy, what are your thoughts on this? I'll give a feedback. I will definitely like take that moment. But the 30 minutes pick your brain, or the like, will you be my mentor, has so much weight to it. And you have to also understand that like the person on the other side is also building a company. And so coming to them with a very specific ask is like the fastest way to get the mentorship that you're looking for, which is one, an established connection with that person, them now knowing what you're working on, but then also getting their insights on something.
Mm-hmm. Being specific is, I think, a very good word in the US, also compared to Europe, maybe, and Austria. When I arrived, a lot of people come to me and say, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And sometimes I'm surprised by the question, because you should have a very specific demand and say, this is what I would need.
Yeah.
And people are ready to help, but sometimes we're a bit too diplomatic and not and say, oh, well, let's just have coffee, But
right. It's not, I think women are worried about feeling too aggressive,
offending someone.
Yeah, offending you or stepping on your toes. But really, like, we know that that's the reason we're all having coffee, is like, I want to help you. And so help me help you by coming with like, hey, I saw that you're connected to this person. I saw you tweeted at that person. They're doing something that's really interesting to me. Can you connect me to them? Great. Done. I now have the to-do that I need to complete after this coffee. Great.
We have another 5 minutes, so I think we can go for 2 more questions. One is a question from Monica. How do you manage your work-life balance, actually? Do you have any tricks? I mean, I guess you have.
I mean, I don't believe in balance. Like, I don't think that there is any such thing as balance. I'm a single parent with 3 kids and have had them home with me and homeschooling throughout the pandemic. So to me, it's about presence and intentionality. Like, when I'm working, I'm 100% focused on work. I don't try to multitask. But when I'm with my kids, I'm 100% present with them. And I'm intentional, even to the point of like, when I'm going to be a couch potato, I'm intentional about that. And I say, for the next 3 hours, I'm going to watch TV, and this is my couch potato time. And that relieves me of the guilt, because how many times have we sat on the couch and been like, I should be working out, I should be working, I should be doing this, and release yourself of the shoulds and just say, this is the thing I'm doing, I'm intentional about it, and then switch to the next thing, and then you can give it all of your attention at that point, because you've actually like given it your focus.
It's the question that always comes up, what's that work-life balance? And I will 100% agree. I do not believe that there is a balance. I believe that there's balance on a daily basis. So you might have a great day of balance one day and a great day of balance the next day, but you may have no balance the week after. We had a very similar story because I also had 3 kids under the age of 4 and got divorced and became an entrepreneur. And that's kind of what I did so that I could be home with my kids. But I wasn't as intentional and just wasn't 100% present for them when I was with them because I was juggling a very large entrepreneurial business that I had a partner and partners and investors and other things. So it's a lot demanding. But I think for me, I have always really thought about and trust me, I've gone to bed many nights crying about what a terrible parent I was that day or that week, or, the child's birthday that I forgot about, or the multiple times that I've forgotten conferences for my kids. But, the balance comes from peace of understanding what you're accomplishing and that you're doing the best that you can. And I think there's a lot to be said about self-love these days because we're really hard on ourselves, women are. And I'm not speaking for men. I'm just saying women are really hard on each other and in ourselves. Yeah. And self-love is understand that you can't be everything. You cannot be 100% all the time. You can do the best that you can do, and you might be able to be 100% some of the time and 50% other times.
Love that.
Maybe that plays into the next question, probably last question from Ingrid. Being an entrepreneur can be very tough sometimes. I mean, you talked about the bad days and the downside of being an entrepreneur. How do you stay motivated doing your business? Do you have any tips or tricks on how to keep motivated?
I mean, whatever you're working on is like a marriage. You have to be passionate every single day and wake up loving what you do. And so for me, it's truly helping women. I know we have to wrap up. So the gas that keeps me going is truly when I hear from a woman who's feeling better because she's taken our product. So
I say celebrate the small wins.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Celebrate the small wins because you'll have a lot more small wins than big ones, and that will help you get to the big ones.
That.
It's very good. That's what my wife always says, who's also an entrepreneur. And she says, you always forget to celebrate the small wins. You're just working.
Yeah.
You should celebrate the small wins. Thank you. That was fantastic. A great panel. Thanks to Amanda. Thanks to Sandra.
Thank you.
I heard a lot of words that influence at the beginning sounded a little bit, threatening maybe. The why, the empathy, the listening, the presence, being intentional, the diversity of thought. I mean, I think we've learned a lot in this panel. I say thank you from the Chrysler Building. I say thank you again, and back to the Limitless Conference, and enjoy the rest of your panels.